Hello everyone. I am Dreaming Stories and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep. So before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now get comfortable and relax. The rain had started around 9, a soft drizzle that glistened against my windshield under the amber glow of the highway lights. By 11, it was a full-on downpour, sheets of water hammering the roof of my car like angry fists. Wipers on max barely kept the world visible. The GPS, glowing faintly in the dark, was my lifeline, the only voice keeping me tethered to something predictable. In 2.3 miles, take exit 14, toward County Road 7. The voice was calm, soothing, as if it weren't leading me deeper into a storm so black it looked bottomless. My eyes stung from staring at the road too long, and fatigue chewed at my brain. I wanted home. I needed my bed. But the highway stretched endlessly like a black ribbon unspooling into nowhere. I glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m. Damn. I'd been driving for almost 6 hours. If traffic hadn't been a nightmare earlier, I'd be home by now. Instead, I was cutting through rural backroads because the GPS claimed it was 10 minutes faster. 10 minutes faster felt like a lie, but at this point, I didn't care. The exit loomed ahead, a yawning black mouth beyond the rain-smeared guardrails. My blinker clicked softly as I slid onto it, tires hissing against wet asphalt. Immediately, the streetlights vanished, swallowed by a darkness so complete it felt wrong. My headlights carved pale tunnels through the mist. Beyond that, just shadows. The GPS spoke again. Continue for 7 miles, then turn right onto Ashwood Lane. Ashwood Lane. I frowned. Never heard of it. My usual route home didn't have anything by that name. Hell, I'd driven this state a dozen times and never seen it on a map. My phone buzzed. A notification from the GPS app popped up, signal weak. Switching to offline mode. Great. The one time I really needed it. Still, the voice droned on confidently. I followed it like a moth chasing firelight, deeper and deeper into nowhere. After about 15 minutes, unease began to worm its way under my skin. There were no houses out here, no lights in the distance. Just thick forests pressing close on either side, branches clawing at the sky like black bones. The rain had softened to a mist now, clinging to the glass, and the silence. God, the silence was unnatural. Even the sound of rain seemed muted, as if the world had slipped underwater. Then I saw it. A road sign. Ashwood Lane. My high beams caught the white letters, old and peeling, nailed to a leaning post. Below it, the smaller reflective sign read, Dead End. The GPS chimed pleasantly. Turn right onto Ashwood Lane. For a second, I hesitated. Something about the sign gnawed at me, maybe the way it tilted like it was trying to pull itself free from the earth, or the fact the letters looked hand-painted instead of printed. But I turned anyway, tires crunching onto cracked pavement barely wider than a driveway. Trees closed in like a tunnel. My headlights barely pierced the fog curling between them. The road dipped, winding like a snake, and for a moment I wondered if I should turn around. Then, through the mist, I saw a glow. A warm glow. Lights. I slowed as the trees fell away, revealing a clearing, and a town. I blinked hard. Thought maybe exhaustion was playing tricks on me. But no, there it was. A neat little grid of streets stretching out in the valley below, lined with houses that looked like they'd been plucked from an old postcard. 2-story homes with wraparound porches and peaked roofs, each one aglow with soft yellow light spilling through lace-curtained windows. Every single house had lights on. Every single one. Yet the streets were empty. No cars. No people. Not even a stray dog trotting along the curb. Just stillness. A sign loomed on the roadside as I crept forward, engine humming softly in the hush. Welcome to Greybrook. The paint was chipped, the wood warped with age, but someone had taken the time to carve neat flowers around the letters. Below that, a smaller digital sign flickered weakly against the rain. Welcome back, my name. My throat closed. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating, but the glow of those letters burned steady in the mist. Welcome back, Daniel. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles blanched. How the hell? The GPS spoke again, cheerful and oblivious. You have arrived at your destination. I rolled forward slowly, tires whispering over damp pavement. My reflection flickered in the dark windows of shops as I passed, a bakery, a hardware store, a little diner with a neon sign sputtering faintly, open. The whole town felt like a movie set left behind after filming wrapped, perfect and sterile, waiting for actors to return. But the lights made it worse. Warm, inviting glows pouring from every window, promising life inside. And yet there was nothing. No movement behind the curtains, no shapes crossing thresholds. I pulled up beside what looked like a gas station, the kind you'd see in old photos, with 2 rusted pumps out front and a wide awning. The sign above the door was cracked but legible. Greybrook Fill and Service. And there, hanging just below the name, was another sign. Welcome back, Daniel. My stomach churned. That wasn't just a coincidence. I killed the engine, and for a moment, the silence roared in my ears. I half expected the pumps to creak, the door to swing open, someone to step out with a smile too wide to be real. But nothing happened. The rain had stopped completely. Even the mist seemed to hold its breath. I grabbed my phone. No bars. The GPS map was frozen on a blank stretch of gray, a little blue dot blinking patiently in the void. And then it rang. I nearly dropped it. The sound shattered the silence like glass. My heart slammed against my ribs as I stared at the screen. Caller ID, Daniel. My name. My number. Calling me. The ringtone chirped cheerfully, oblivious to the ice crawling down my spine. I answered. Hello. My voice cracked like old wood. For a heartbeat, nothing but static. Then. Daniel. My name, whispered in my own voice. I froze. Every nerve in my body screamed. Who? The whisper came again, soft as silk sliding across glass, and this time it wasn't just my name. Daniel, come inside. And then the line went dead. I stared at the phone, chest heaving. My reflection wavered in the black screen, wide eyes and rain-slick hair and a mouth struggling for air. Slowly, I lifted my gaze. Across the street, through the shimmering mist, a house glowed brighter than the rest, its windows golden, the door slightly ajar. Inviting. Waiting. The door was open just enough for a shadow to slip through. Warm light poured from inside, pooling onto the damp porch boards like molten gold. The glow was soft, inviting, like the smell of bread baking in a childhood kitchen. It didn't belong here, not in this empty postcard of a town that breathed silence like oxygen. My engine ticked as it cooled, the sound too loud in the stillness. The phone lay in the passenger seat, black screen reflecting the dim interior glow of the dashboard. My name had come from it. My voice had come from it. I should leave. Every nerve in my body was chanting it like a prayer, leave, turn around, get out. But my keys were in the ignition. My foot should have slammed on the gas. Instead, my hand moved to the door handle. The cold air slapped me as I stepped out. It smelled faintly sweet, like damp earth after rain mixed with something else. Something floral. Roses, Maybe. Or lilies left too long in stagnant water. I crossed the street, shoes whispering over wet pavement. The house was one of those old Victorian things you'd see in horror movies, gabled roof, peeling white paint, porch swaying gently as if a phantom hand nudged it. As I climbed the steps, the wood groaned under my weight. The door hung open just wide enough for me to see the faint flicker of what looked like a fire inside. A glow that danced against the walls. Hello. My voice felt brittle, like ice ready to shatter. No answer. I pushed the door. It opened without resistance, revealing a living room frozen in time. A threadbare rug sprawled across scuffed hardwood floors. A sagging couch sat before a brick fireplace, flames writhing cheerfully. The walls were lined with faded floral wallpaper, and above the mantel hung a large, oval mirror dulled with age. And it smelled like home. Not my current apartment, but my parents' house, the one I grew up in. That same faint mix of old books, furniture polish, and something warm and buttery, like cookies cooling on a tray. My chest tightened. Daniel. The whisper came from deeper in the house, curling through the air like smoke. My heart punched against my ribs. I stepped inside. The floor moaned beneath me. The door clicked softly shut behind me, though I hadn't touched it. Who's there? My voice barely sounded like my own. No answer. Only the whisper of fire and the faint tick of a clock somewhere down the hall. I turned toward the sound. A narrow corridor stretched ahead, dimly lit by wall sconces. Pictures lined the walls, sepia-toned portraits of people with stiff collars and solemn eyes. Families frozen in black and white smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. Something moved at the edge of my vision. A shadow, slipping around a corner. I swallowed hard and followed. The hallway opened into a kitchen that looked ripped from the 1950s, mint green cabinets, checkered linoleum floor, a round table set for two. Plates gleamed, silverware perfectly aligned, as if someone had been expecting company. Steam curled from a pot on the stove. My stomach twisted when I realized it smelled like stew, rich, savory, spiced exactly the way my grandmother used to make it. I touched the pot. Warm. Daniel. The voice again, clearer now, impossibly close. My voice. I spun around. And froze. Because sitting at the table was me. Same face, same hair damp from the rain, same jacket zipped up to the collar. My reflection made flesh. He sat perfectly still, hands folded neatly in front of him, eyes locked on mine with a calm that felt surgical. Sit, he said softly. My voice, my tone, but stripped of everything human. My knees wobbled. My throat clenched around 1,000 words that wouldn't come out. What is this? He smiled. It was the kind of smile you give a stray dog before snapping its neck. It's home, he said. You've been gone so long, Daniel. We've been waiting. We. The word slid into my brain like a needle. I stepped back. My heel hit the doorframe. His smile didn't falter. You shouldn't have taken the shortcut, he said. But you always do, don't you? Always looking for the easy way. His voice curled with something darker now, mocking, almost tender. I don't understand, I croaked. You will. He stood. The chair legs scraped against the linoleum, the sound jagged as broken glass. And then he moved toward me, slow, deliberate, like a predator savoring the last few steps before the kill. My body chose for me. I ran. The hallway blurred as I tore through it, boots pounding against the floorboards. The front door loomed ahead like salvation, and I slammed into it with enough force to rattle the walls. The knob twisted easily in my hand, thank God, and the door swung open into the cold night air. I stumbled onto the porch, sucking in ragged breaths, and bolted down the steps. My shoes hit the pavement, sending up tiny sprays of water. The car. Just get to the car. I risked a glance over my shoulder. The house stood quiet, glowing softly as if nothing had happened. No sign of him, me, at the door. For a second, I wondered if I'd imagined it all. If exhaustion had finally cracked my brain. Then the porch light flickered. Once. Twice. And every other light in every other house down the street flickered with it. One heartbeat later, they all went out. The town plunged into blackness. Panic clawed at my throat as I fumbled with the car door and dove inside. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the keys. The engine roared to life, and I threw the car into reverse, tires screaming against the slick road as I whipped around and floored it. The street unspooled ahead in darkness, my headlights cutting swaths through the mist. Houses blurred past, empty windows staring like blind eyes. Then I saw them. Shapes. Standing in the middle of the road. Dozens of them. Men. Women. Children. Pale as chalk in my beams, faces slack and empty, eyes like dark holes punched through paper. They didn't move as I barreled toward them. I swerved hard, tires shrieking, barely missing the front line of them. My heart jackhammered as the car fishtailed, but I straightened it out and slammed the accelerator to the floor. In the rearview mirror, I saw them turn their heads in unison to watch me go. And then, the GPS voice chimed cheerfully. Turn left onto Ashwood Lane. I screamed at it and tore the phone from the dash, hurling it into the passenger footwell. My chest felt like it was going to split open. The road curved, and for one brief, impossible second, I saw the highway ahead, the blessed shimmer of streetlights through the fog. Salvation. And then the fog closed like a fist. When it cleared, I was back at the sign. Welcome to Greybrook. The gas station ahead, glowing softly in the dark. And the digital sign beneath it flickered once, twice, before settling into steady light. Welcome home, Daniel. The car idled in the street, engine rumbling like a distant growl in the suffocating quiet. My fingers locked around the steering wheel, knuckles white, nails biting into the vinyl. The gas station's neon glow shimmered through the mist, haloed in amber like a beacon, and yet, it wasn't safety. It was a trap dressed in familiarity. I stared at the sign. Welcome home, Daniel. Not back. Not this time. Home. My breath fogged the windshield in short, jagged bursts. I should have floored it, rammed the sign, driven until the tires shredded and the tank ran dry. But my body wouldn't obey. It sat rigid, trembling, like a puppet waiting for strings to move. Then I saw it. A flicker in the corner of my eye, a shadow gliding along the row of houses to my left. And another, farther down, peeling itself from the mist like a smudge of darkness come alive. They didn't walk so much as, slide. Effortless. Silent. Every instinct in me screamed to run. I slammed the gear into drive, stomped the gas, and tore down the main street. The headlights slashed through the fog, revealing more houses, more glowing windows, perfect, empty replicas of suburban warmth. But the deeper I went, the more wrong it felt. The street stretched on too far, like a rubber band pulling without snapping. And then, there it was again. The same intersection. The same leaning lamppost with its halo of mist. The same sagging porch swing creaking in some phantom breeze. I'd gone in a circle. No, I whispered, voice splintering. No, no, no. I gripped the wheel harder and spun it right, careening onto a side street that should have led anywhere else. Houses blurred past in a dizzying carousel of sameness. Then another turn. And another. And another, until the nausea rolled through me like a tide, and the truth punched through my skull. There was no way out. The car crawled to a stop in the middle of a cul-de-sac that hadn't been there a moment ago. The mist clung thick around the houses like damp cotton, muffling the world to a heartbeat hum. I killed the engine. Silence slammed down like a coffin lid. And then I saw it. Something tacked to a telephone pole at the edge of the cul-de-sac. A rectangle of yellow paper, edges curled from damp, ink running slightly in the mist. My legs moved without permission, shoving the door open. Cold air licked my skin as I stepped out, shoes whispering against wet asphalt. The paper flapped gently in the breathless air. Bold letters stared back at me, neat and deliberate. The rules of Greybrook. 1. Always answer when your name is called. My heart stuttered on the fourth line, choking on its own rhythm. If you see yourself, do not run. I ran. The memory of that other me sitting at the kitchen table flickered like a film reel across my mind, his calm smile, his voice curling around my name like smoke. Behind me, a soft shuffle stirred the mist. I turned. Shapes were forming again. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. People, or what passed for people, sliding soundlessly across the street. Faces too smooth, too pale, like porcelain masks carved from moonlight. Their eyes were pits, depthless and slick. My body moved before thought could catch up. I sprinted to the car, breath ragged, shoes slapping wet pavement. My hands fumbled for the handle, clawed at it, got it open. I dove inside, slammed the lock, and collapsed against the wheel, heart hammering like it wanted out. The figures didn't follow. They just watched. A silent congregation in the fog, heads tilting in perfect unison like puppets on strings. And then, one by one, the house lights winked on again, spreading down the street in ripples of warm gold, bathing the town in its false glow. I swallowed the scream clawing at my throat. My hands shook so hard I could barely grip the wheel. I started the engine again, because doing nothing felt worse than anything. The GPS voice chimed, bright and placid, like a needle sliding into my spine. Proceed to the nearest service station for assistance. The words echoed in the car, cold and honey-sweet. My eyes drifted up. Through the windshield, the mist parted just enough to reveal the gas station sign again, glowing like a sick smile. Greybrook Fill and Service. I didn't remember turning the wheel. Didn't remember driving. But somehow, I was rolling toward it, tires whispering on slick pavement, the shapes in the fog sliding aside like curtains drawn back for an audience. The pumps stood like sentinels, rusted and hunched, their hoses coiling like snakes. The station's windows burned with warm light, promising refuge, promising answers. My headlights washed over the door, and that's when I saw it. Another sign. Not glowing. Not digital. Just a board nailed to the wall, letters carved deep and blackened like scars. Check in before midnight. I looked at the clock on the dash. 11:58 p.m. And from the corner of my eye, through the glowing window, I saw him again. Me. Standing behind the counter, smiling. Waiting. The gas station door gleamed in the glow of the overhead light, a perfect rectangle of amber warmth in a world gone to frost and fog. The carved sign above it loomed like a threat scratched in bone. Check in before midnight. My pulse pounded in my ears, thick and heavy as a war drum. 2 minutes. The dash clock read 11:58 p.m., and the second hand ticked with smug precision. I didn't want to go in. Every cell in my body howled against it. But what was the alternative? Drive? Where? Straight into the loop that always spat me back here. Stay in the car. The mist was thickening again, curling with intent, shapes gliding at its edges. Faces flickered pale in my headlights before melting back into shadow. They were waiting for me to decide. My hands clenched the wheel so hard my fingers ached. The glass of the station door gleamed like an eye, and behind it, God help me, stood my reflection. Not a mirror. Him. Me. He stood perfectly still behind the counter, head tilted slightly, that same calm smile stretched across my face. His hands rested lightly on the worn wooden surface, fingers long and patient. Like a clerk waiting for a late customer to finish dithering. My stomach turned to ice. The clock ticked over. 11:59 p.m. My breath came ragged. The figures in the mist weren't just watching anymore, they were drifting closer, gliding like oil over water. Silent, pale, endless. I opened the car door. Cold slapped me in the face, sharp as broken glass. The air tasted metallic, tinged with something sweet and rotten, like lilies left to die in stagnant water. The gravel crunched under my boots as I crossed the lot, each step echoing too loud in the hush. My reflection, no, not reflection, copy, never moved. His smile didn't flicker. I reached the door. A brass handle gleamed dully beneath the porch light. My hand hovered over it, trembling like a live wire. For one desperate second, I thought about bolting, tearing into the night and taking my chances with the shapes in the fog. Then the station clock inside chimed once, soft and hollow, like a bell tolling at the bottom of a well. Midnight. The door swung inward on its own. Warm air breathed over me, carrying the scent of old wood and gasoline, undercut by something sweet and cloying that clawed at my throat. I stepped inside because the alternative was worse. The interior looked almost normal, if normal meant a place stuck halfway between decades. Rusted signs for oil brands hung crooked on walls papered with grime. Shelves sagged under the weight of canned goods wearing dust jackets thick as fur. A single fluorescent tube buzzed overhead, casting the room in a sickly yellow haze. And behind the counter, he waited. Me. Up close, the differences clawed through my brain like broken glass. The hair was wrong, too neat, every strand lacquered in place like plastic. The skin too smooth, waxy, stretched tight over bone without pores or blemishes. And the smile. God, the smile. It was my mouth, but widened just a hair too far, the corners dragged up into something that hinted at tearing. Welcome back, Daniel. My voice slid out of his mouth like oil, wrong in ways I couldn't name. I couldn't breathe. My throat shrank to a pinhole. What is this? Who are you? The grin didn't waver. We've been waiting for you. It's time to check in. My gaze dropped to the counter. A leather-bound ledger rested there, cracked with age, its pages yellowed and curling. Beside it lay a brass pen, its tip glinting in the jaundiced light. What do you mean, check in? I whispered. He tilted his head, and for an instant, his smile flickered, just a twitch, like a puppet string pulled too hard. Everyone checks in, Daniel. It's the rule. I took a step back, but the air behind me thickened like tar. The door had shut. I hadn't heard it close, but I felt it, sealing me in with the weight of a coffin lid. Shapes flickered in the glass, pale and patient, pressing against the fog outside like moths against a windowpane. Watching. What happens if I don't? My voice cracked like dry wood. His smile widened until it carved into his cheeks, a rictus stretched too far. His eyes gleamed like oil, black swallowing every shred of light. Then you stay, he said softly. Forever. The fluorescent tube hummed louder, filling the room with a sound that drilled into my skull. My chest locked tight, heart clawing for a way out. I lunged for the ledger. Pages fanned beneath my trembling hands, scrawled with names in looping black ink. Each one neat. Perfect. A list of the dead. Or the lost. Or something worse. At the very bottom, the last entry burned like a brand. Daniel Price, arrived. The ink gleamed wet. Fresh. My hands recoiled as if the page had teeth. I didn't write that, I croaked. My double's smile cracked wider. The skin around his mouth split like damp paper, leaking something dark that dripped soundlessly onto the counter. You will. He slid the brass pen toward me, slow as a guillotine's drop. The hum rose to a scream. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsing in and out like a throat swallowing air. The figures outside pressed closer, faces flattening against the glass, mouths moving in silent unison. Sign. The word coiled in my skull like smoke, a whisper not from him but from everywhere, the shelves, the walls, the floor beneath my feet. The station vibrated with it. Sign. 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 I snatched the pen. My hand hovered over the page, shaking so hard the nib scratched tiny scars into the yellowed paper. Why? My voice broke like a child's. He leaned forward, his face inches from mine, black eyes spilling like tar down his cheeks. Because this is home, he breathed. And no one leaves home. The second my name started to form on the page, the door slammed open behind me with a crack like thunder. Wind roared in, ripping papers from the counter, shrieking through the aisles. The figures outside scattered like ashes in a storm. My double shrieked, high and wrong, a sound that scalded my ears, and lunged across the counter. I ran. The world became a smear of motion and noise. My boots hammered the floorboards, splintering them as I hurled myself through the open doorway into the freezing night. The fog hit like a wall, thick and choking, clawing into my lungs. I didn't look back. Couldn't. The sound of him behind me, of it, was enough. Nails raking wood. A mouth unhinged in rage. The car. Just get to the car. The gravel blurred beneath my feet as I sprinted, breath burning my throat raw. My fingers clawed at the handle, tore the door open, and I flung myself inside, slamming the lock just as something hit the glass with a wet, cracking thud. A face smeared against the window. My face. But the mouth was too wide now, split ear to ear, packed with teeth that weren't mine. The glass spiderwebbed under the force of its grin. I jammed the keys into the ignition and twisted. The engine roared to life, tires screaming as I floored it, gravel spitting like gunfire. The shape clung for a second, nails screeching down the glass, before tumbling into the dark. I didn't stop. Didn't breathe. I just drove. But when the mist finally thinned and the road uncurled ahead, my heart stopped dead. The sign loomed out of the dark, haloed in that same sickly glow. Welcome to Greybrook. CHE. And on the digital board beneath it, the letters pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. Thank you, Daniel. The car rolled to a trembling stop in the middle of the empty street. The engine still purred beneath the hood, but my hands hung limp on the wheel, knuckles streaked with blood where the brass pen had dug in. My breath sawed in and out of me like a blade, ragged, broken. The sign glared through the mist behind me, letters pulsing in a rhythm that matched my racing pulse. Welcome to Greybrook TH. The words throbbed in the dark like a wound. I didn't remember signing. I didn't remember writing my name, but the ink had gleamed fresh, and now the board said thank you. The thought made my stomach lurch, while crawling up the back of my throat. Not real, I whispered to myself, a mantra I didn't believe. Not real, not real, not real. The fog curled thicker at the edges of the street, rolling in like a tide, swallowing houses in silence. A faint hum threaded through it, the same hum from the fluorescent light in the station, low and steady, like the town itself was breathing. I had to get out. I didn't care how. I'd ram through the sign, tear across the woods, wreck the car in a ditch if I had to. Anything to claw free from this loop. My foot slammed the gas. The car jerked forward, tires screeching against wet pavement as I tore past the gas station, past the glowing houses, past the carved sign with its black letters burned into my skull. Check in before midnight. The street whipped by in a blur, fog breaking apart in the beams like ripped silk. The GPS lay dark on the passenger seat, screen fractured, spiderweb cracks radiating from the impact when I'd hurled it earlier. But the speaker, oh God, the speaker still worked. It crackled to life. Destination confirmed. I nearly lost control of the wheel. The voice was wrong now, warped, stretched like a cassette tape unraveling. Estimated time to arrival. The pause hung like a blade over my spine. Then, forever. The road opened ahead like a black river, and for a fleeting second, I thought I saw salvation, a glimmer of highway lights through the mist. My chest seized with hope so sharp it hurt. I floored it. The glimmer grew brighter, golden halos in the fog like lanterns leading the way home. My throat tightened with relief as I roared toward them, faster, faster, until the mist thinned, and the truth hit like a freight train. They weren't highway lights. They were windows. The same houses. The same street. The same sign, rising from the dark like a tombstone carved for me. Welcome to Greybrook. The wheel jerked in my hands as I slammed the brakes. The car skidded sideways, tires screaming before it fishtailed to a stop. My chest heaved against the seatbelt, sweat slicking my skin. I was back. I never left. Something shifted in the mist. A sound like whispers rippling through water brushed the edge of hearing, soft at first, then swelling into a susurrus of voices, countless voices, overlapping, threading through one another in a weave of hunger. Shapes emerged. Dozens at first, then more. Hundreds. Gliding across the pavement, rising from the fog like bones dredged from a riverbed. Faces bleached white, smooth and featureless except for pits where eyes should be. They moved in silence, their steps soundless, yet the air throbbed with that whispering chorus. And then I saw their hands. Every single one of them clutched a brass pen. Ink dripped from the nibs like blood. I slammed the car into reverse, but before the tires even screamed, something hit the hood. A body. No, my body. Or what wore my body like a suit. It crouched low, grinning that paper-split grin, black teeth gleaming. Tar dripped from the corners of its mouth, sizzling as it hit the metal. Its eyes, God, its eyes, were bottomless wells, and in their depths, I saw shapes moving. Faces. Mouths opening and closing in silent screams. My own voice slithered out of its throat, warped into something sharp enough to cut skin. Why are you running, Daniel? You already belong. It slammed a hand against the windshield. The glass quivered, cracks spiderwebbing outward like frost. Another hit, and another, each one harder, faster, as the voices outside swelled into a cacophony of whispers that clawed at my skull. I threw the car into drive, floored the pedal, and the creature rolled off the hood with a shriek like tearing metal. The engine howled as I tore through the street, the mist clutching at the headlights like greedy fingers. And then, darkness. Total. Crushing. Black. The headlights sputtered out. The dashboard lights died. The engine coughed once, twice, then fell silent, leaving me entombed in a coffin of fog. The whispers stopped. Silence bloomed, vast and obscene. And then, slowly, a voice bloomed inside my head, not outside, not through speakers, but in me. Deep, patient, curling like smoke in the hollow of my skull. You checked in, Daniel. You're one of us now. The temperature dropped like a stone. My breath billowed in white plumes. The windshield glazed over with frost, letters etching themselves across the glass in delicate, jagged strokes. Look behind you. Every nerve in my body seized. My lungs locked tight. Slowly, God, so slowly, I turned my head. The back seat wasn't empty anymore. I was sitting there, grinning. And behind him, behind me, the shapes pressed against the windows, their porcelain faces splitting into smiles like cracked china, black ink bleeding from their mouths as they whispered in unison. Welcome home. I couldn't breathe. My body was frozen, a marionette with its strings cut, while my double sat in the back seat like a shadow that had learned to smile. His grin stretched wider, peeling the corners of his mouth until his cheeks trembled with the effort. His eyes, God, his eyes, were bottomless ink, black pits swallowing light, but deeper than that, there were faces. They floated like drowned corpses in the dark pools of his gaze. Mouths opening, closing, silent screams rippling in water. And then, one of the faces moved. It was mine. Get out, I croaked. The words tore my throat raw, a splintered whisper barely more than a breath. He leaned forward slowly, his movements wrong, segmented, like frames of a film spliced out of order. His voice slid through the air, my voice, but hollowed out, scooped clean of anything human. Where would you go? I couldn't answer. Couldn't think. My fingers scrabbled for the door handle, slick with sweat. I yanked, shoved, but the door didn't budge. None of them would. He tilted his head, and the sound of his neck cracking rolled through the car like distant thunder. Let me show you, he whispered. The world snapped. There was no time to scream. No sound of glass breaking or doors opening. Just a blink, a flicker, and I was no longer in the car. The cold hit first. It wasn't night air anymore, it was bone-deep, marrow-freezing cold that chewed through flesh and gnawed on bone. I gasped, breath exploding into white fog, but the fog didn't vanish, it hung there, thick and pulsing, curling around me like fingers with too many joints. Shapes writhed in it. Not human. Not anymore. Things that crawled and slithered and stood on too many limbs, their edges fraying like torn paper. I couldn't see their faces. God help me, I couldn't tell if they had faces at all. And beneath me, floorboards. I blinked hard. The mist parted in thin ribbons, revealing a room I'd never seen yet new in my marrow. A kitchen with mint green cabinets, checkered linoleum, a table set for two. A pot simmering on the stove, steam curling in lazy ghosts. The stew smelled like my grandmother's recipe. Rich. Spiced. Familiar in a way that hollowed me out. Because this wasn't my memory. And yet, it was. I staggered forward, shoes clacking on the linoleum. The table was set. 2 bowls. 2 spoons. A neat stack of napkins folded with military precision. The second chair scraped against the floor, slow and deliberate, as something invisible pulled it back. And then I saw them. Hands. Pale, long-fingered, curling over the chair back like spider legs. And then a face rose above it, a woman's face, skin porcelain smooth, eyes black as tar pits. Her lips split in a smile that was almost gentle. Danny, she said. Her voice was honey on rusted blades. You're home. My stomach clenched. Nobody had called me Danny since my mother. And this wasn't her. But the voice, God, the voice was perfect. No, I rasped, stumbling back. You're not. She laughed softly, the sound like glass chimes shattering underwater. Poor thing. You've forgotten. But that's why we brought you back. The mist thickened behind her, and more figures peeled out of it like layers of rotting wallpaper. Men in suspenders with faces smooth as river stones. Children in Sunday clothes, their mouths yawning open like black pits. A woman with hair that dripped like oil, dragging across the floor in sluggish rivulets. Every one of them smiling. "Do you remember the rules?" the porcelain woman whispered. Her head tilted, her neck bending too far, tendons creaking like rope. I shook my head, words jammed in my throat like broken glass. She leaned closer. Her breath was cold enough to burn. "You signed, Danny. That means you stay." The room rippled. Walls buckled inward, then stretched, melting into something alive. The wallpaper peeled back in strips, writhing like tongues, revealing not plaster but flesh, pale and slick, pulsing with a heartbeat that wasn't mine. Veins crawled across it like black roots, throbbing to some rhythm older than God. The table cracked in half as something surged up from beneath, a mass of limbs, too many joints bending wrong, mouths opening along its length in wet blossoms of teeth. I ran. The floor heaved like a living thing beneath me, boards splitting into gaping mouths that snapped at my heels. I barreled through a doorway that hadn't been there before and tumbled into a street. The same street. Perfect, still, glowing with warm light from windows that weren't real. Behind me, the house stood pristine again, lace curtains swaying in a phantom breeze. But the smell lingered. That sweet rot of lilies, curling in my lungs like smoke. Something broke inside me. A thought that slid through like a knife between ribs. There is no leaving. And as if the town heard it, agreed, the mist began to clear. I saw them then. All of them. Lining the sidewalks, standing in doorways, staring from porches. Dozens. Hundreds. Pale and smiling, their eyes slick with black hunger. And every single one of them wore a face I knew. My teacher. My father. My best friend from childhood. Faces plucked from memory and stitched onto something hollow. I staggered back, breath ripping out of me in raw sobs. And then I saw him. Me. Standing in the middle of the street, calm as sunrise, hands folded like a preacher waiting for his flock. His grin carved wider, teeth dripping ink. "You're starting to remember," he said softly. My voice. My cadence. What are you talking about?" I choked. He stepped closer. The crowd parted for him like a tide. "You've been here before, Daniel." His eyes glittered like oil slicks on black water. "This is where you came when you ran the first time. This is where everyone comes, sooner or later." My knees buckled. The world tilted. He leaned in, lips grazing my ear, voice spilling like cold tar down my spine. "You never left. You only forgot." His words burrowed deep, hollowing me out from the inside. "You never left. You only forgot." They rang like church bells in my skull, tolling against every nerve, shattering whatever fragile barrier had kept me tethered to reason. My breath came in broken stabs as the street around me warped. The houses leaned closer, roofs sagging like bowed heads. Windows stretched into gaping mouths rimmed with curtains like torn flesh. And all the faces, the ones that shouldn't exist, stared with smiles that split too wide, teeth too many, too sharp. They whispered without sound, their lips forming shapes my brain refused to name. My double, no, the thing wearing me, stood inches away now, grin slick and shimmering like ink under oil. His voice slid into my ear again, my voice stripped bare, polished into something inhuman. "Do you want to remember?" "No," I rasped, every syllable scraping my throat raw. He chuckled, low and warm, the kind of laugh you'd trust if you didn't know it belonged to a liar. "Too late, Daniel. It's already coming back." The world lurched. The street dissolved into fog, thick and choking, curling down my throat like smoke. Shapes twisted in it, faces blooming like bruises across the mist, my mother's eyes, my father's jaw, strangers whose names crawled at the edge of memory like insects under glass. Then came the sound. A drip. Slow. Steady. Echoing in a place that wasn't real. I blinked, and the fog tore open like paper. I was standing in a hallway. Narrow. Wallpaper peeling in long, curling strips. A bare bulb swung from the ceiling, painting everything in a jaundiced pallor. And I knew this place. I shouldn't, but I did. The smell hit me first, stale beer, sweat ground into carpet, the copper tang of old anger. A door loomed ahead, cracked open just enough for light to leak through, flickering like a dying pulse. My feet moved without my consent, dragging me forward in slow, jerking steps. I pushed the door. The room was small. A bed shoved against one wall. A man slumped on its edge, back curved, shoulders trembling with the weight of silence. His face hung low in his hands, fingers digging into flesh like claws. A bottle lay tipped on the floor, amber bleeding into the carpet. Dad? The word ripped itself from my throat before I could stop it. His head jerked up. And for a second, just a second, it was him. My father. Eyes bloodshot, jaw slack, despair carved deep into the lines of his face. Then his mouth split. Not in grief. In a grin that tore too wide, ripping through his cheeks until they dangled in strips. Teeth bloomed like shards of porcelain, spilling out in obscene rows. Black ink dribbled down his chin, thick and tarry, dripping onto the floorboards with soft, wet plinks. Danny, he rasped in a voice like grinding metal. You ran. But you always come home. The walls convulsed, slamming inward like jaws. The bulb overhead burst, plunging the room into a darkness that pulsed with whispers. Hands shot from the walls, pale, jointed wrong, grabbing, clawing, dragging me back into the dark. I screamed. The world ripped open again. I was back on the street, on my knees, vomit sour in my throat. My palms were raw from clawing at asphalt that pulsed faintly, as if the town had a heartbeat. The faces hadn't moved. They still ringed me in perfect silence, their smiles carved too deep, their eyes oceans of black. My double crouched in front of me, tilting his head like a curious child. You remember now, he murmured. The fight. The screaming. How you wished you could run and never come back. How you wished they'd all disappear. I shook my head, tears slicing hot trails down my face. No. No, that's not. Not real. His grin widened, splitting his face into halves held together by threads. You made it real, Daniel. You wished for an easier road. And Greybrook heard. My stomach turned to stone. The words scraped like claws down my spine. What is this place? I whispered. His eyes gleamed, black swallowing every shred of light. It's the shortcut, he said softly. The one you've been taking all your life. Every time you wanted out, every time you closed your eyes and begged for a door, Greybrook opened it. My breath hitched. And now? I asked, voice splintering. His grin became something feral. Now you stay. The crowd stirred. Their whispers rose, swelling like a tide, words clawing at my ears. Stay. 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 They moved closer, pale shapes gliding soundlessly across the pavement, faces slick with hunger. The air thickened, choking me in sweetness and rot. I scrambled to my feet, heart detonating in my chest. No. I'm not staying, I'm not. My double's hand shot out, cold as marble, clamping around my wrist. His grip burned like frostbite, black veins spidering under my skin where his fingers dug in. "Stop running," he said. His voice was calm now, warm as a lullaby. "It's easier if you stop." Something in me snapped. I swung. My fist cracked against his jaw with a sound like breaking porcelain. His head whipped sideways, and then turned back, grin unbroken, as shards of pale skin slid down his neck. "Better," he hissed, teeth clicking like knives. "Fight. It makes it sweeter." The crowd surged. And then, for the briefest heartbeat, I saw it, past the houses, beyond the mist. A shimmer. Faint, trembling like heat above asphalt. Something that might have been a road. An exit. Or a lie. Either way, it was all I had. I tore free, skin ripping under his grip, and ran. The first step felt like running through syrup. The air clung to me, thick and wet, each breath dragging knives into my lungs. My legs screamed, muscles locking, but terror wrenched me forward anyway. The shimmer was there, at the far edge of the street, beyond the warped grid of houses. A promise. A lie. I didn't care. Behind me, the sound began. Not footsteps. Not the scrape of shoes. The whispering. It rose in waves, rippling like dry leaves in a furnace wind, thousands of mouths murmuring in unison. "Stay. Stay. Stay." The word slithered into my ears, through my teeth, down my spine until it rooted deep. The pavement buckled beneath my feet like something alive. Veins spidered through the asphalt, slick and pulsing, pumping black ichor that smelled like rot and lilies left too long in stagnant water. Houses leaned inward, windows gaping wider, curtains twitching like lungs trying to breathe. The shortcut was eating itself, and me with it. I sprinted harder, heart detonating against my ribs. My shoes smacked wetly against the road as the mist twisted into tendrils, coiling toward my ankles like pale fingers. I leapt over them, stumbled, and crashed hard onto my palms. Flesh tore. Blood spattered blackened asphalt, and the ground drank it like a thirsty mouth. The shimmer loomed closer. A pale, trembling light beyond the mist, humming faintly like wires strung too tight. Hope clawed at my throat. If I could just. A shadow slammed down in front of me. I skidded, my breath ripping out in a strangled cry. It was him. Me. His grin was broken glass now, jagged and glinting in a mouth stretched so wide it looked ready to split his skull in half. His head lolled at a wrong angle, neck tendons creaking like wet rope, and ink bled from the seams of his skin, pooling at his feet in slick ribbons. Still running, he crooned, voice sliding under my skin like a blade. Always running. He lunged. I dove sideways as his hand slammed into the pavement, cracks radiating outward in black veins. I scrambled up, my body a live wire of pain, and bolted down a side street that hadn't existed a heartbeat ago. It stretched forever, lined with houses that pulsed and shivered, their siding crawling with something that writhed like maggots beneath paint. Windows blinked open and shut like eyes, curtains fluttering in soundless laughter. A chorus rose behind me. Not whispers now. Screams. The shapes were coming. Hundreds. Maybe thousands. Faces melting and reforming, mouths flowering with teeth that dripped ink and something worse. They didn't run. They didn't need to. The street warped for them, shortening for their steps, lengthening for mine. The shimmer flickered at the far end, shrinking like a dying ember. My lungs burned. My legs felt carved from lead. And then the street twisted underfoot, buckling like a rug yanked by invisible hands. I crashed down hard, chin splitting on rough asphalt. My teeth rang. Blood filled my mouth with the taste of copper and lilies. The ground convulsed. Cracks split wide, vomiting black tendrils that lashed up like eels. One coiled around my ankle, slick and cold, yanking me toward the road's gaping wound, a pit lined with teeth that weren't teeth but splintered bone and shards of glass, chomping in slow, eager rhythm. I clawed at the pavement, nails tearing to the quick, leaving crescents of blood as the tendril hauled me closer. The mouth widened, pulsing, strings of tarry saliva stretching like melted rubber. Daniel. The voice hissed from everywhere at once, the asphalt, the houses, the fog. 1,000 voices braided into one. Stop running. Come home. Another tendril snaked around my wrist, tightening until my bones ground like wet gravel. A third slithered up my spine, cold as dead water, wrapping my throat in a lover's caress. I screamed, hoarse and broken, and slammed my free hand against the asphalt, feeling it writhe under my palm like muscle. My fingers brushed something hard, metallic. The brass pen. Still slick with my blood. I didn't think. I just drove it down into the tendril choking my throat. The nib punched through, black ichor erupting in a gush of liquid shadow. The thing shrieked, a sound like rusted nails on glass, and recoiled, flinging me sideways. I rolled, coughing tar from my lungs, and bolted for the shimmer. The street writhed beneath me, but I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Houses melted into heaps of meat and wood, windows yawning wide as mouths, curtains whipping like tongues. The shapes screamed behind me, voices scraping raw against my bones. The shimmer flared. Closer. Closer. And then I hit it. A wall of light slammed into me, white hot, shredding my vision into static. My body stretched, warped, unspooled like a tape melting in fire. My scream ripped itself inside out, tangled in the roar that wasn't sound but a tearing of everything real. For one impossible second, I saw it all. The town folding in on itself like an origami nightmare. The faces, thousands, millions, pressed into its skin like fossils, mouths yawning in silent prayer. The ink flooding through streets like veins in a corpse. And beyond it all, a door. Black. Infinite. Waiting. Then I was falling. Cold wind knifed through me, snapping bones like dry twigs, until I slammed onto asphalt. Hard. The world tilted. My ears rang. My eyes burned as I blinked against the glare of headlights whipping past. Cars. Real cars. Horns blared, brakes screamed, and someone shouted something I couldn't hear through the white noise in my skull. I was sprawled across the shoulder of a highway, my limbs shaking like tuning forks, lungs gulping air that didn't smell like lilies or rot. The mist was gone. Greybrook was gone. I lay there for what felt like hours, sobbing, shaking, my fingernails rimmed with black that wouldn't scrub away no matter how hard I scraped them against the gravel. Finally, when my voice was just a rasp and my body nothing but nerves on fire, I dragged myself up. Staggered to my car, a wreck of twisted metal on the median, headlights dead, windshield spiderwebbed with cracks. I laughed. I think I laughed. Hysterical, broken, a sound that tasted like blood and bile. Then my phone buzzed. The screen glowed, fractured but alive. A single notification pulsed against the black. New contact added, home. I stared until my eyes blurred. My throat clicked as I swallowed. Slowly, my thumb trembled toward the icon. Before I touched it, the phone rang. Caller ID, home. I didn't answer. But the voicemail that followed was my voice. Soft. Warm. Patient. Don't worry, Daniel. Shortcuts always lead back home. I didn't sleep that night. I don't think I could if I tried. I sat in the wreck of my car on the shoulder until dawn smeared the horizon with dirty pink, until the cold crawled up my spine and numbed my fingers, until the highway noise blurred into a low, endless hum. The phone lay in my lap. Silent now, but its screen glowed faintly like an open eye. New contact added, home. I deleted it 3 times. Each time, it came back. The first time, I laughed, a jagged, broken sound that tore my throat raw. The second time, I cried, fat hot tears spilling over cracked lips. The third time, I just stared at the word until my vision swam, until the letters curled and writhed into something else. Always home. I hurled the phone into the median. It shattered on the asphalt, splintering into shards that winked in the weak morning light like teeth. When I looked back at the driver's side mirror, for half a second, my reflection grinned. I called a tow, gave some lie about skidding off in the storm. The driver didn't ask questions. He didn't notice the black streak seared into the hood, curling like veins, or the hairline cracks along the windshield that spidered into the shape of a door. I got home by noon. My apartment looked the same thrift store couch, same chipped mugs in the sink, same faint mildew smell curling under the door. But the light was wrong. It didn't fall the way I remembered. I told myself it was the hangover of fear. Trauma. Adrenaline still howling in my blood. But when I turned on the kitchen light, there was a note waiting on the counter. The rules of Greybrook. 1. Always answer when your name is called. 2. Never stay outside after the lights go out. 3. Do not look into the windows after midnight. 4. If you see yourself, do not run. 5. Remember, you belong here. Same paper. Same ink. Damp, edges curling. The hum started then, soft, so faint I thought it was the fridge at first. But it wasn't. It was underneath everything, a bass note thrumming in the marrow of the walls. I grabbed the note, tore it to confetti, flushed it down the toilet. When I came back, it was on the counter again. Whole. That night, the phone rang. Not the shattered one, I'd left its corpse on the highway, but the landline I never used, the one buried under junk mail and takeaway menus. The caller ID glowed like a wound. Home. I let it ring. 42 times. When the machine picked up, my voice spilled through the speaker like oil. Danny, don't make it hard. You know shortcuts always lead back. The hum in the walls deepened. Lights flickered, stretching shadows long enough to brush the floor like fingers. I didn't sleep. By the third day, the cracks started. Tiny at first, hairline fractures crawling up the plaster like frost patterns. Then deeper. Wider. Black veins bulging from them, slick and pulsing, dripping ink that pooled on the floor and refused to dry. I called maintenance. They never showed. That night, the hum became a heartbeat. And then the door appeared. It wasn't there when I moved in. It wasn't there yesterday. But when I stumbled out of bed at 3:07 a.m., throat dry, eyes sanded raw, it was waiting at the end of the hall. Tall. Narrow. Painted the same dull white as the walls, but wrong, too tall, too narrow, the frame leaning inward like a grin. There was no handle. Only a brass plate, gleaming in the dark. Check in. I stood there for a long time, heart beating a hole in my chest, mouth as dry as paper. My breath ghosted in pale ribbons as the temperature plummeted. From the other side of the door came whispers. 1,000 voices braided into one. Stay. 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 Something thumped gently against the wood. Then again. Slow. Rhythmic. Like a hand. Or a head. I backed into my bedroom and slammed the door. It didn't matter. The hum seeped through. This morning, I woke to find another note on the pillow beside me. The rules have changed. 1. Do not ignore the door. Point 2. Check in before midnight. Point 3. If you run, we'll follow. Point 4. Stop pretending you don't belong. Point 5. You're already home. The brass pen lay on the nightstand. Still wet with ink that wasn't ink. The note stayed where it was, no matter how many times I tore it apart. No matter how many times. Every time I blinked, it came back, perfect, neat, the ink still wet, soaking into my sheets like veins. By the third day, I stopped trying. By the fifth, the hum was louder than my own heartbeat. It crawled under my skin, a bass note vibrating in the marrow of my bones. Lights flickered in rhythms that weren't random. The bulbs pulsed in time with the beat, throbbing like the walls were alive. And the door. The door wasn't waiting anymore. It was growing. At first, it was flush with the end of the hallway. Then it crept forward, inch by inch, like the building was birthing it from the drywall. The frame widened. Stretched. Bulged with something pressing from the other side. The brass plate gleamed brighter every night. Check in. By the 7th day, the rules changed again. I woke with them etched into my arm. The words were carved into the skin in black grooves, neat and perfect as if a careful hand had inked them beneath the flesh. Final rules. 1. Do not look back when the door opens. Point 2. Do not speak when we call your name. Point 3. Do not run this time. Point 4. Bring the pen. Point 5. Bring yourself. The sight of those words punched the breath from my lungs. I scrubbed at them until the skin blistered, until my fingernails peeled blood in thin crescents. The letters stayed. When I staggered to the bathroom, I saw myself in the mirror. And for a second, my reflection didn't move. It just smiled. I stopped leaving the apartment. Stopped answering calls from friends. Stopped pretending any of this was real life. The outside world felt like a dream bleeding at the edges. I tried the front door 3 times. The first time, the knob melted under my hand, brass dripping in rivulets that hissed against the floor. The second time, the hallway beyond wasn't my building anymore. It was rows of doors. Each one white. Each one with a brass plate. Each one breathing softly, in and out, in and out. The third time, there was no knob. Just the words etched deep. There is only one way out. That night, I heard the voices through the door. Not whispers now. Laughter. Children laughing. Women humming lullabies that curdled into screams. A low, soft chant beneath it all. Stay. 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 And then, my own voice. Calm. Patient. Danny, time to come home. I don't remember picking up the pen. But it was in my hand when the hum became a roar, when the door's frame cracked like a rib cage splitting open. The walls rippled, pulsing, veins bulging black and fat, dripping tar that sizzled against the carpet. The temperature plunged. My breath came in white ribbons as the door opened. It didn't swing on hinges. It peeled. The frame tore back like wet skin, revealing nothing on the other side, nothing but dark, stretching forever. But the dark moved. It writhed. It breathed. It whispered in tongues that scraped the meat off meaning, clawing inside my head until I bled thought. The smell hit next. Lilies. Damp, rotting lilies. Sweet and choking, filling my lungs until every breath was a funeral. And then they came. Hands slid from the dark, long, pale, jointed wrong. They gripped the doorframe, nails curling into claws that shrieked against wood. Faces bloomed in the black like fungi, faces I knew, faces I'd loved, faces I'd forgotten. My mother's smile. My father's eyes. My own face, splitting into a grin so wide it carved the skull into halves. And behind them, the town unfolded. Houses stacked on houses, bending, writhing, ribs of streets snapping open to reveal marrow slick with tar. Windows gaped like mouths, curtains slithering like tongues. The hum was a hymn now, a song that bent the spine of reality until it cracked. And I understood. Greybrook wasn't a place. It was a hunger. It lived in every shortcut. Every whispered prayer for an easier road. Every desperate plea to escape the weight of your own life. You don't find Greybrook. It finds you. Come home, the voices chorused, a billion mouths speaking as one. Check in. The pen burned in my hand, heat searing the grooves of my palm. I lifted it because I couldn't not. Because the rules were in me now, etched deep as marrow. The ledger slid from the dark like a tongue, its pages wet and pulsing, ink bleeding across flesh paper veins. A space waited at the bottom. My name hovered there already, faint, ghost pale. I pressed the pen down. Black ink spilled. The hum stopped. Silence. Then, light. I opened my eyes to daylight pouring through lace curtains. A kitchen table set for two. A pot steaming on the stove. And outside the window. Greybrook. Perfect. Still. Glowing under a sky too blue to be real. I smiled. And when the bell above the gas station door chimed somewhere far away, I knew someone else had taken a shortcut.